Hello there everyone and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well and welcome back to another video in my NFL Power Rankings and Team Breakdown series. If you guys have been enjoying this series so far, make sure you drop a like on this video as well as subscribing and turning on post notifications. I am having a goal of reaching 50 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you could help me out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. Just a reminder, every single day until the NFL season, you'll be getting a new video from me breaking down each NFL team, looking at their strengths, their weaknesses, some storylines for the season, as well as some key players on the field, as well as for your fantasy rosters, and then just diving into a little bit of schedule overview, as well as some win-loss predictions. So team number 17 today, it really does pain me to say this, but I have the Arizona Cardinals at this spot. They're in my tier 3 of power rankings, which is teams that are missing a few pieces or that it factor. If you want more info on what that means and what any of my power ranking tiers mean, that will be in the description below, and you can look at all of that stuff there. So let's get into the coaching analysis here. Steve Keim or Keim? Let me know in the comments. 8th year here as the general manager of the Cardinals. You've got Cliff Kingsbury as head coach and presumably offensive coordinator because they didn't really name one going into year 3, along with Vance Joseph at defensive coordinator going into year 3, and Jeff Rodgers as their special teams coordinator going into year 4. Strengths, this receiving group is good. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is the second best receiver in the NFL behind Davante Adams. You can argue between those two really as number 1 and 2. I think the buck kind of stops there. You can maybe throw, I think, Tyreek into that conversation, but I think between those three, I think Hopkins sits nicely at number 2. They did bring in AJ Green, who, I mean, he's a little bit over the hill at this point, but he'll provide something there for them as a solid number 2 guy. And then I really did love the Rondale Moore pick. He's explosive, he's quick, and he's got the short guy connection with Kyler Murray, so that's something to look forward to there. And then you've got the disappointments in Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella on this team as well. I feel like Cardinals fans have really, especially Andy Isabella, just been super disappointed in those guys. And then Chase Edmonds out of the backfield can also be a nice passing threat. And then having Kyler Murray as your quarterback, I mean, the dude is special. I drafted him last year for my redraft league in fantasy, and he did numbers for me. Now that is fantasy. I know that's not how good he actually is, but I do think Kyler Murray is a special talent. The running especially is crazy. Like, I'll just say, if you gave me the choice between a guy like Lamar Jackson versus Kyler Murray, I think I would take Kyler because I like the upside in the passing game a little bit more. I am not saying that Lamar Jackson is a bad passer of the football. He does not throw the football bad. He is a better player right now than Kyler Murray is. However, for the future, I think Kyler Murray's running is not comparable, but it's close. He's got good running. I would say even great running for a quarterback. It's just Lamar Jackson is just another level, like Michael Vick levels, even better than him maybe, in terms of, putting the ball down and really going after it. And then he really does have a nice, strong arm. He can make really nice sideline throws. There is always the concern about over-the-middle throws because, once again, Kyler's a little shorter. He's about my height, I think, which is crazy that a guy like that can even play in the modern NFL. I think Kyler really has to tip his cap to Russell Wilson on that one. For even being in the NFL versus playing for the Oakland A's right now, if we're being honest. So that's enough rambling about that. And then the defensive line, the front 7, looks pretty good this year. J.J. Watt coming in, he's not his former self, but if they can even get like 70, 80% of J.J. Watt, that's pretty good to bring in on, a veteran deal. They do have Chandler Jones. Curious how long he still stays here, but they do have him for now. You've also got Marcus Golden, Isaiah Simmons, who they drafted last year, who I think they're going to have a more realized role with last year. He was kind of, this big versatile piece that I think they were still trying to figure out what to do with him. I think Vance Joseph will get it figured out. And then they do have Jordan Hicks and Zaven Collins, who they drafted this year, who looks really good against the run as this run-stuffing interior linebacker. So they do have some really good pieces to look forward to there. And then I also think that the secondary should be pretty decent this year. Budda Baker, one of the better young safeties coming up in the NFL. I really just love the energy that he brings. He reminds me of like a hyper Jamal Adams, if that's even possible, with just the way that he crashes on the run, especially. He hits hard like Jamal does. Byron Murphy at their number one corner spot. They do bring in Malcolm Butler, who I like as a veteran presence to this team of younger guys. Darqueze Dennard as well, and Jalen Thompson are some notable names there. So I think that they will be good this year. Not great, but they'll be good. And then some weaknesses. The offensive line, it's not bad. I'd say it's right around average. I love the Rodney Hudson pickup. Being able to trade for him, I think, was kind of a steal. But they're really just not that deep. Justin Pugh, DJ Humphries, Brian Winters, and Calvin Beecham Jr. Those are the other guys here besides Rodney Hudson at center to look out for. So, I mean, if any of those guys really go down, I think Kyler's good enough where he's going to be able to scramble a little bit. But we did see last year he got into trouble, sometimes. But I think the year before that, 2019, I think was the year they drafted him, where he really was trying to run for his life there. So I think, especially with, like I said, Kyler being a shorter quarterback, you want to make sure that you can get him the best protection possible. And then sadly, I don't have 3 weaknesses, I have 2. But sadly, head coach is one of them for me. As of right now, I am not the biggest believer in Cliff Kingsbury, especially with Kyler Murray. Marcus Whitman, a.k.a. that franchise guy, made a very good point about how the air raid offense has a lot of mesh involved, a lot of over-the-middle passing routes, which, if you'll know, Kyler Murray is not necessarily great at throwing over the middle right now. So I just don't think Cliff is a good fit here for this team, honestly. I don't think he should have been fired last year, but I think this year he is going to be one of the top hot seat candidates in the NFL, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he's gone by the end of the year, especially with, unfortunately, how I have them finishing out this year. So head coach here, I'm not the biggest Cliff Kingsbury fan. I'm also not a fan that he doesn't have an offensive coordinator. That seems kind of like, I don't want to say like a self-serving type of thing, but it does seem a little weird that you don't have somebody there to at least give the role to. Like, you can still have an offensive coordinator and be completely in charge of the offense, or at least involved in it very heavily. I mean, look at Matt LaFleur even in Green Bay. Everybody knows he's the play caller. I mean, Arthur Smith next year with the Falcons. Everybody knows he's going to be the guy behind everything, or in theory behind most stuff. So I think this team would really benefit greatly from getting a different guy in there. I mean, we did see Eric Bieniemy stay put in Kansas City. Maybe he's someone to look for this year. Mike LaFleur, his name could heat up. Joe Brady is another guy. But I do think they need a fresh face in here to really take this team to the next level in terms of what it can do offensively. I just don't think Cliff is the guy for this team. I just don't think it's a very good fit in general. So then let's go into some storylines and question marks heading into the season. Can Cliff Kingsbury take a step up in year 3? My answer is no. I mean, I already kind of went over that before in that last whole spiel, so I won't touch on it too much, but I'm just not the biggest Cliff Kingsbury fan, at least in this system. And then what will J.J. Watt look like in 2021? Like I said, if they can get 70, 80% of what J.J. Watt can be, then I think that's a win for this Cardinals team, especially in establishing a veteran presence with him and Chandler Jones for now on the other side of the ball, or on the other side of the line there. So we'll see with J.J. Watt. I'm projecting he's at like 70% of what he used to be. I'm saying he is definitely, I think, past his prime. I think his body has really taken the toll there. The dude kind of looks like a robot, even with all the braces and the gear that he wears, unfortunately, on his arms. But I'll always be rooting for him as a former Wisconsin Badger. Big fan of J.J. Watt, and just a great guy all around, great leader in the NFL, and just a good dude. And then can Kyler Murray really make a jump in year 3 to truly become, top 10 worthy? I mean, even top 5 worthy in the NFL. Like I said, I think he's got all the talent to be able to do it. I think all the physical tools are there. He's just got to get the mental side of the game down a little bit more, I think. And sometimes he can get a little erratic. Sometimes I think he can dip out of plays a little too early. which I do think has something to do with his physical abilities in terms of lacking in size. But he makes up for that with his quickness in the run game. He is a plus advantage, I think, in the run game for this Cardinals offense. So we'll just have to wait and see with Kyler Murray. Like I said, I think the world of him. I think he's a great player. So we'll see what he can get to. I think that he can reach as high as top 5 in the NFL. I'm not sure if he can eclipse the likes of maybe a Deshaun Watson, but I think there's a real possibility that at the end of this year, we could be talking as Kyler Murray being a top 10 to top 7 quarterback in the NFL, somewhere in that range. So 3 key players, Kyler Murray. He really does make or break this team. We saw a couple times him deal with a shoulder injury last year, and the offense kind of sagged with him. DeAndre Hopkins, once again, just following up a great year with another great year, and they're also paying him a lot of money. So he's just got to continue to prove that he was worth all that money. Rodney Hudson as well, big guy to bring in here. I thought this was a super underrated move, honestly. So I'm just looking for Rodney Hudson to really be an anchor at the center position for them, and to be able to just give them solid production for Kyler Murray, and just to be able to be his anchor really in the middle there. The 3 best fantasy players, I mean, the top 2 are pretty obvious: DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going to be the 3rd quarterback drafted in dynasty leagues this year. There's no really getting around that. I mean, I think Mahomes, Allen are locks at 1 and 2, and then I think Kyler Murray is a lock for number 3. Just how young he is, what he does in the running game, especially for fantasy. Running touchdowns are pretty rare for a quarterback to have. The dual threat of him really is something to behold. And then I would say Chase Edmonds is number 3 here. I kind of struggled with this one, but I think Edmonds, just being, with Kenyon Drake gone, I think that he's going to get a majority of the carries, even with James Conner still on this, or coming to this team from Pittsburgh. So then my sleeper player for this team for Dynasty, he's not really a sleeper, but I'm going to go with Rondale Moore. He is someone who, while he won't quite get the attention of a Jamar Chase, a Jalen Waddle, even an Elijah Moore, I think in Dynasty rookie drafts, he's someone you can snag in the 2nd round and really be satisfied with. He's going to get open quick, especially on a lot of those crossing mesh routes that Cliff Kingsbury loves to run. He's someone who's going to get a lot of receptions if you're in PPR leagues, that type of stuff. He's going to really be death by 1,000 cuts here in Arizona, and I'm all for it. I really like how exciting he is as a player. He's someone who could potentially get butts in seats in a couple of years, just with his play style in general. So he's not really the biggest sleeper I've covered on this list, but I think he's the biggest sleeper on this team, just because you already do have DeAndre Hopkins, who is going to go in the top 3 of fantasy receivers this year. Rondale Moore is someone to watch out for, and he could potentially even take over that number 2 spot in as soon as a year, depending on how bad AJ Green looks. Andy Isabella and I can't even remember the other one's name, Christian Kirk, there we go, have really disappointed in the past 2 years. So to have someone like Rondale Moore, who hopefully seems to be the answer for that number 2 spot for Arizona as a team, hopefully it works out for him. So let's go ahead and get into the schedule overview here. Now, as for strength of schedule, they're hovering around 13th in the NFL in terms of the hardest schedules. They are in the NFC West, so that does make a little bit of sense. Week 5 against San Francisco in terms of key games. That's going to be a real test of where they're at as a team. If you'll remember last year, they did beat San Francisco at the beginning of the year, but then at the end of the year, they kind of lost embarrassingly to the 49ers, I believe. So we'll see how it goes there. And then at San Francisco, they have a Thursday game the game before. So I do think that they're going to split the series against San Francisco, just because of the fact that they do play them coming off of a Thursday game. Either that or they play them at home in week 5. I think there's a real opportunity that you see them split the series with the 49ers. And then week 14, home against the Rams. Week 18, home against Seattle. These are, once again, I think, to me, just checking in points, right, to see where your team's at and how they're doing. I do think they're going to split the series with Seattle, split the series with San Francisco. I don't know how they're going to do against the Rams this year. I think the Rams are too good of a team where they might just lose both of those games to them. We'll have to see. So, unfortunately, my prediction for them, after being really high last year on the Cardinals, is 8-9. My floor for them is 5 wins. There's a real opportunity that this goes south for them. Playing against the NFC West, you can really get snuck up on. So there's an opportunity that they hover around that 5-win mark, although I think that's less likely than not. Ceiling for this team is 13 wins. I mean, there's a universe where Cliff Kingsbury figures it out. He's all of a sudden this young mastermind of a coach in the NFL. In year 3, Kyler Murray makes another huge step in his development. Rondale Moore really excites. The offensive line takes a step up. Everyone plays well on the defense. There's a real opportunity for this team to be a riser. And if I'm being honest, they're probably, I think, one of the teams on this power rankings that has the most potential to move up based on their performances this year, especially playing against the pedigree of competition in the NFC West. I think it really does say something that my team before the Cowboys was the highest team in the NFC East, and they don't even trump the worst, quote-unquote, worst team in the NFC West this year to me. So I do think that speaks volumes of their competition and just kind of the bad draw they get there. But the Vegas over-under for this team is 8.5 wins. Really, I think with a lot of these middle teams in my power rankings, this is kind of a no bet. There's too much talent on the team for them, I think, to lose a lot of those games for the under. But I don't know if the coaching is good enough to get them, so far over the over. I mean, based off my prediction, you could take the under. I don't know if I would. I think I would take the over. I don't know what it's sitting at right now for the official odds in terms of how people are betting it, the plus or minuses on that. But I think I would bet the over just because of the off chance. They have a lot of talent on this team. So just an overall statement. I just mentioned the Dallas Cowboys a second ago, and this team reminds me a lot of them, although they aren't quite in as bad of a spot. I think, for the record, Cliff Kingsbury is a lot better of a coach than Mike McCarthy is. This team really does have all the talent in the world. They've got, I think, a head coach that's going to hold them back, though. I mean, all the offensive pieces are there, except maybe at offensive line, you could say, and maybe the running back room is a little weak, but what does that really matter in the NFL, in the modern NFL, who you have at running back? I will say, though, if Cliff Kingsbury can show any kind of improvement this year, we could really see this Arizona team make a deep playoff run. As I said before, this team has the biggest ability to rise up in these rankings as any other in my power rankings for this team. But those are my thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals. Let me know what you think below. Do I have them ranked too high or too low? Once again, make sure you drop a like on this video as well as subscribing and turning on post notifications. Just a reminder, every single day up until the NFL season, you're going to get a power rankings, a new team breakdown of a team, just going through them one at a time here up until Thursday, September 9th. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.